Hello, my name is Larry Susskind. I'm on the faculty in the Department of Urban Studies and Planning at MIT. Part of my time I'm at MIT teaching and doing research, but part of my time I'm working out with cities and towns in different parts of the United States and other parts of the world. I teach and I do urban planning. And what I want to talk about is the way in which urban planning relates to what's happening in cities that have to respond now to the risks posed by climate change. We call this activity climate adaptation. And the key theme I want to explore today is, what does it take for a community to organize itself, to adapt to the new risks posed by climate change? I think everyone listening is familiar with the risks posed by climate change, particularly for coastal and riverine cities. We can have flooding, certainly. We can have intense storms that churn up all the water, cause erosion. You could have sea level rise if you're by the coast. You can also have, in other places, drought. You can have in the same places drought in different seasons. You can have forest fires. All of these are problems, challenges, risks posed by climate change. The key to risk management at the local level is planning, anticipatory governance, whole communities thinking ahead about what's going to happen so they can be prepared, so they can reduce the risks that they face. Imagine a community somewhere that's been hit by a flood, a coastal community. The flood that's come in from the edge of the city has destroyed what was the area in which tourists love to come. Look at the boats, look at the harbor. Also down by the harbor was the wastewater treatment plant for all of this commercial and industrial activity along the coast. All the pipes came to one place. The flooding destroyed the wastewater treatment plant. The city has to borrow money to rebuild it. This isn't the first time. They're still paying the debt, the bond, the money that they borrowed to rebuild the wastewater treatment plant the last time the harbor was hit by serious flooding. Now it seems like the flooding is going to happen every couple of years. What should they do? Should they try to rebuild the wastewater treatment plant in exactly the same space, in the same way? I mean, they own the land. If they move it to another place, they've got to buy land. That's going to increase the cost. If they move it to another place, they've got to take up all the old pipes, put in all new pipes. That's a big expense. They may not even be able to buy land and pick a good location very quickly, in which instance they have a problem because the existing plant's not usable. They have a serious short-term problem. If you were advising the city on how to manage this risk management decision, manage a risk management decision, what would you do? Would you say they should take a referendum, and whatever the majority wants, the majority should have rebuild in the old location, build in a new location, two choices, an election, and the majority rules? Or should the elected and appointed officials, consulting with technical advisors, having hearings perhaps, so that people can have a say and learn something from each other, but then the elected officials, who have to continue to stand for election, make a decision about what to do? Rebuild the old, shift to something new? Or is there another way? How could a city engage a substantial portion of the population in first exploring the options? Where, what design, at what cost, over what timetable, with what professional help? Who would gain, who would lose? Analyze all that. Then hold a series of community learning sessions in which people can ask questions. They're probably going to say what they like or don't like. They're probably going to say what they like or don't like. They don't need to hear anything. But maybe in these sessions, which are not about making decisions, but learning more, understanding different points of view, enough people could get a sense about how different folks view the problem, view the choices, view the decision that the city ought to make. You've had study sessions, they've had study sessions. Now, what should come next? What if the city officials appointed a set of representatives of different categories of stakeholders whose interests became clear during the conversations and said, we want to see if you can reach consensus. If you can reach consensus, 15, 18 people nominated by different groups, we, the elected officials who have the legal authority and must make a decision, we'll go along with consensus if you can reach it. We want some of our staff to sit in on the conversation, but the goal would be informed consensus. Now, what would happen in this committee in a consensus building process? First of all, somebody needs to manage that process accepted by everyone. We call those folks professional neutrals, mediators. It's the kind of work that I happen to do, so I know a little bit about what it's like to be in the middle when you're trying to help people reach consensus. And at first, everybody starts saying what they want. And then as the mediator, we say, yes, but you need to propose something that's good for you and good for everybody else, because they only want to hear from us about what's our best advice in terms of an agreement that we can reach. And after a period of venting about what they want, a consensus building process, when the goal is informed agreement, can begin to talk about what we call packages. Choices that represent a mixture of what different groups want and need. In some instances, groups are willing to live with a second or even a third choice about the rebuilding of the water treatment plant, if that could be linked with new subsidies to private industry to rebuild as well. If you can put a package together that creates value through trades, you can build a consensus. At first, people will just think they're lining up to debate. But when the group finally comes around to understanding, unless they can reach an agreement, they won't have any influence on what the city officials decide. Then they can begin to think about new project plus. Plus what? Plus what different groups need. In the end, if this group can come close to unanimity, they hand this to the elected officials. Elected officials love to know what they can do that everybody will stand up and cheer about and say, great work. And that's what a consensus process produces. The elected officials still have to make a choice. Notice there's no technically correct decision here. Local climate adaptation involves scientific and technical inputs, but collective choices or political community decisions. So this is not the kind of thing you can turn over to an engineering consultant and say, tell us what the best thing to do is here. There are too many trade-offs. There are too many gains and losses that are spread unevenly across different groups. And if those groups are represented in a consensus building process, it's possible to get an informed agreement that then becomes the basis for decision making that reflects the trade-offs that the community as a whole believes in. Every time a decision has to be made about adapting to climate change, there are going to be trade-offs. There are going to be gainers and losers in different ways in different people's eyes. The idea is each time you do this, you want to make it easier to continue to cope with the pressures of climate change. They're not going to get less. They're not going to reduce. There are going to be more and more effects, more and more choices, more and more preparedness required. The way in which a community does adaptation planning now is going to make it easier or harder to do adaptation over time. So, local planning, anticipatory governance, turns out to be a process in which scientific and technical inputs have to be blended to take account of political differences, not through coalition building and behind-the-scenes lobbying and majority rule votes, but rather through an open, accountable, informed, transparent process of consensus building. Good luck with whatever work you're doing to help us cope with the effects of climate change.